There may come a night when the entire world steps outside, looks up at the constellation Orion, and realizes something is terribly wrong. Not because of a comet. Not because of an eclipse. But because one of the most famous stars in human history is gone. Or worse, it has exploded. At the shoulder of Orion burns a red giant known as Betelgeuse. For centuries, it has watched over Earth, steady, familiar, almost eternal. But now, that illusion is breaking. Milky Way, a star on the edge. Betelgeuse is not just another star. It is a cosmic giant, so large that if it replaced our Sun, its surface would stretch past the orbit of Mars. Mercury, Venus, Earth, gone. Swallowed whole. This is not a peaceful star. This is a star in its final act. Massive stars like Betelgeuse don't fade quietly. They live fast, burn violently, and die in explosions so powerful they can outshine entire galaxies. And Betelgeuse is already deep into that danger zone. Warning the warning signs for years, astronomers noticed something strange. Unusual dimming. Violent eruptions. Massive clouds of material being thrown into space. Then came 2019. The world witnessed something unprecedented. Betelgeuse began to fade dramatically. Not through telescopes, but visibly, to the naked eye. People who had watched Orion their entire lives noticed it immediately. Something had changed. New moon. The great dimming. By early 2020, Betelgeuse had dimmed so much that fear spread across the scientific community. Was this it? Was the star beginning its final collapse? Telescopes around the world turned toward it. Data flooded in. And what scientists discovered was both reassuring and deeply unsettling. Betelgeuse hadn't exploded. Not yet. Instead, it had violently ejected enormous amounts of hot material into space. That material cooled into dust, forming a massive cloud that blocked its light. The dimming wasn't the end. It was a warning. Collision. A star losing control. This wasn't a gentle fluctuation. This was a stellar convulsion, a giant star literally shedding parts of itself. Imagine a star so unstable, it throws off chunks of its own atmosphere into space, altering its brightness across the galaxy. That's Betelgeuse now. Unpredictable. Unstable. And possibly, approaching collapse. Brain. What scientists now fear. For decades, astronomers believed Betelgeuse's explosion was far in the future, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of years away. But now? That certainty is gone. Some scientists still believe it's early in its final stages. Others think something far more alarming, that we may be witnessing the beginning of the end. Shooting star. What if it happens? If Betelgeuse goes supernova in our lifetime, the sky will never look the same again. It could become so bright that it's visible during the day, a second point of light hanging in the sky. At night, Orion would be permanently altered. A familiar constellation, rewritten in fire. A global moment. This wouldn't just be a scientific event. It would be a human moment. People across the planet, cities, villages, entire nations, would step outside and see the same impossible thing at the same time. A star, exploding. The sky would stop feeling permanent. It would feel alive. Microscope. The science of destruction. But beyond the spectacle, something even deeper would be happening. A supernova is not just an ending. It is a beginning. Inside stars like Betelgeuse, heavy elements are created: iron, calcium, oxygen, the very building blocks of planets and life. When the star explodes, it scatters these elements across space. Everything we are was once inside a star like this. DNA. The truth we can't ignore. That's why Betelgeuse matters. Not because it will destroy Earth, it won't. It's about 725 light-years away, far too distant to harm us. But because it reminds us of something far more unsettling: the universe is not static. It is changing, even now. Milky Way. The final thought: maybe Betelgeuse won't explode tomorrow. Maybe not for thousands of years. But the difference between someday and soon no longer feels as clear as it once did. Because this star is not calm. It is evolving. It is unstable. And it is behaving like something nearing its end. The most unsettling thing about Betelgeuse is not just how unstable it looks, it's how invisible its final countdown might be. Because unlike in movies, stars don't give clear warnings. There is no ticking clock in the sky. No visible crack forming across its surface. Instead, everything happens deep inside, hidden beneath layers of burning plasma, where physics pushes matter to limits we can barely imagine. Fire the core. Where death begins at the heart of Betelgeuse, a silent crisis is unfolding. For most of its life, the star survived by fusing hydrogen into helium, just like our Sun. But massive stars don't stop there. They keep going. Helium becomes carbon. Carbon becomes neon. Neon becomes oxygen. Oxygen becomes silicon. And finally, silicon becomes iron. That's where everything changes. Warning: the iron limit. Iron is a dead end. Unlike other elements, fusing iron doesn't release energy, it consumes it. And that means the star's core suddenly loses the very thing holding it up against gravity. When that happens, there is nothing left to stop the collapse. Bomb the moment of collapse. In less than a second, the core of Betelgeuse could collapse in on itself. Faster than you can blink, a region larger than Earth would compress into something only a few kilometers wide. This is called a core collapse supernova. And when it happens, it doesn't ease into destruction. It detonates. Wave a shockwave through a star. As the core collapses, it rebounds violently, sending a shockwave racing outward through the star's layers. Everything above the core, millions of kilometers of stellar material, is suddenly blasted into space. The explosion releases more energy in seconds than our Sun will produce in its entire lifetime. Light bulb: a light that outshines night from Earth. The effect would be immediate and shocking. The dim red glow in Orion would vanish, and in its place, a blazing point of white-blue light would ignite. Bright enough to rival the moon. Possibly bright enough to see in daylight. Imagine walking outside at noon and seeing a star. Globe: the first signal. Neutrinos. But here's something even more incredible. Before we even see the light, we might detect something else. A flood of tiny, nearly invisible particles called neutrinos. They would pass through Earth instantly, billions of them streaming through your body without you ever noticing. But deep underground detectors would. And scientists would know, it has begun. Telescope: humanity's front row seat. For the first time in history, humanity would witness a nearby supernova with modern technology. Telescopes across the planet, and in space, would lock onto Betelgeuse. From visible light to X-rays to gamma rays, every wavelength would tell a different part of the story. This wouldn't just be observed. It would be studied in real time. Brain: what we would learn. Scientists would watch how the shockwave moves, how elements are formed, how matter is ejected into space, how a neutron star, or even a black hole, is born. This would be one of the greatest scientific events in human history. A once-in-a-lifetime cosmic laboratory. Shooting star: the aftermath. After the explosion, Betelgeuse wouldn't just disappear. It would leave behind something new. Possibly a neutron star. A dense object where a single teaspoon of material weighs billions of tons. Or, if the collapse is extreme enough, a black hole. A region of space where gravity is so strong, not even light can escape. Cyclone: the sky will never be the same. And Orion? It will never look the same again. One of its brightest stars, gone. Replaced by a glowing remnant that slowly fades over months, then years. Future generations will look up and see a different sky. And they will hear stories about the time when it changed. Warning: but here's the truth: even with everything we know, we still can't predict when this will happen. It could be tomorrow. It could be 10,000 years from now. That uncertainty is what makes Betelgeuse so haunting. Because it means the moment could come without warning. Milky Way: a living sky. We like to think the sky is fixed, unchanging, safe. But Betelgeuse is proof that it isn't. It is dynamic, violent, alive. And one day, it may remind us of that, in the most dramatic way possible.